Well, I can see that there's 6 people sitting on this webinar at the moment, but I don't get to see any of your faces, which is so disappointing. You just get to see my face, which is really dull. Much more fun if I get to see your faces. But why don't you all say hello in the chat? I have put my Instagram account there, just so that you know how to get hold of me if you want to afterwards. But I'm just going to say hello on the chat. If there's somebody for rain, don't talk to me about rain, lovely lady from Zurich, because it's absolutely foul here in the UK as well, because I'm based in the UK and the weather's been really disgusting. Is there anybody else out there who's going to say hello to me? I can see there are 11 people who've joined the call. Hi, where you come from, Fabian? And there's Irina from Italy and MH, also from Zurich. Somebody from Mexico, fantastic. I love it if you're from Mexico. Actually, my daughter's out in Mexico at the moment. So it's a place that is close to my heart. We're going to just wait a couple more minutes before I leap in, because there's not much point in me starting talking until we've got a few more people on the call. Apparently it's a public holiday all over Europe today, and possibly across the world. I don't know. It isn't here in the UK, so I think quite a lot of people might not be on the call today. They might watch the recording later, but hopefully they're having a fun day off. But thank you to all of you who have joined. It's 7:02. Do you think I should leap in? I don't know. I think I will, but please keep chatting on the chat. And if anybody wants to ask questions, you can ask me a question in the chat or go into the Q&A function. And then I will look at the Q&A function every now and again and just check if there are any questions. So please feel free to ask questions. I'm sorry that we're not all in the same room and we can't all chat together, because that would be so much more fun. But you've just got me talking at you for the next little while. But as I say, please interrupt me through the chat or the Q&A if there's anything that you feel that I'm missing, or you want to challenge, or you want to think that isn't landing for you, or you want to ask me to delve a little bit deeper, just let me know on the chat. Great. So this webinar is called Digital Detox, but it's really about how we can use the digital world to our advantage in terms of how we can communicate most effectively when we are having to do it virtually rather than face to face. Because the strange thing is that even though, you know, the pandemic hopefully is starting to slow down a little bit and countries are opening up and we are starting to see each other more face to face, there's no question that there has been a little bit of a shift to the virtual world. And there's no question that if we're going to save the planet, etc., we need to do a lot less sort of business travel, etc. We need to be communicating more online. So it's how can we communicate effectively online? So that's what this is really all about today. So I guess the 4 sort of basic tips that I would have if you want to communicate authentically and well online, a couple of basic things. The first is show up. In other words, unless it's a situation like this where we happen to have a system here at a small world where you don't have everybody's faces on the screen. Normally on a Zoom call, you have people's faces. A lot of people choose not to switch their cameras on. I would always encourage you to switch your camera on. I would always encourage you to switch your camera on with a big smile and just look as if you are engaged and interested in what is being said, because that is very rewarding for whoever's talking, and it also allows you to make a connection. If you don't have your camera on, you're never going to make a connection. Make sure that you have an appropriate background, of course. I know this is basic stuff, but this is all really important. Think a little bit about your background. You don't want to have a background where you've got the washing just behind you, or you've got light right behind you. In other words, if you sit with a window behind you, then you have a sort of black face. You really want my windows over there so that the light is on my face so that you can see me, you can see what's going on for me. So you really want to try and do that. You really want to try and have the light on your face and not behind you, and then try and get a good background. You know, you can buy all these backgrounds. I've seen some really cool backgrounds recently, sort of like funky office space, you know, nice diagrams, whatever, behind people, so that you're actually blocking out the fact that you might have washing in the background. The only thing that I wouldn't recommend is I've got a client who has a sort of palm tree scene behind him. It just doesn't look very professional. If you want to have professional conversations, the palm trees are great if you're having, you know, a party with your mates, you know, you're having some kind of virtual interaction with your mates. But if it's a professional space, you want a professional background. When you come onto a call, try and look as if you're engaged. Try and look as if you're interested. I know it's exhausting. We are endlessly on Zoom, but when, or on some kind of webinar platform. But when we are, just make sure you show up in a motivated, interested, smiley kind of way. And can I just say on that front, just be judicious about when you use virtual platforms, because sometimes actually you can have a phone call, and that's fine. So just make sure that every single interaction you have doesn't have to be on Zoom or on a webinar type platform. You can just as easily have a phone call. In fact, what I now do with some of my clients is we go for a walk. So they are where they are and I am where I am. And we just both plug our AirPods on and we go for a walk, and we have a session that way. We walk and talk. So you don't have to do everything visually and on a webinar. But if it is on a webinar platform or on a virtual platform, make sure that you show up. And if you are showing up, as I say, lean in, amp yourself up, be present, look at the camera, engage, because that is the best way that is the best chance you've got of actually really making a connection. And as I say, it's just such a shame that I don't have you all on camera so that I can see you, I can wave at you, you can frown at me, you can nod at me, because all of that will help me communicate more effectively to you, and it'll also help you to really engage with what I'm saying. So those are the 4 kind of lessons about virtual. And just one more thing on webinars. Just remember that you don't want your camera to look like that, so that you've just got that much and you've got a lot of ceiling. You really want to make sure that you have got the camera at a good angle. I've actually put my computer on a stand, especially board stand, which is made by, and I'm just going to lift this up so I can tell you, it's made by, I'll just get the name, and I just got it on Amazon. It's Boyata, Boyata. So my machine's on a stand. It just means that the angle of the camera is better, so that I'm not, it's not kind of, the camera isn't up my nose, or there's a lot of ceiling or whatever. So that's just a basic, I know you know all of this stuff, but it's worth just tossing in these basic things. So let's talk about effective communication, about making sure that we are being authentic communicators. And what I'm going to talk about now are the kind of basic rules of effective communication. And they're just as important online as they are when you're seeing somebody face to face. So hopefully this will help you both for your face-to-face communication and for online communication. So does anybody have any idea what the first and most basic rule of effective communication is? You can type it in the chat, because clearly I can't see your faces, sadly. What is the most important rule of effective communication? Anybody got any ideas? Yes, exactly that. If you want to be a good and effective communicator, you need to be a good listener. And Fabian said eye contact. So I hope I'm going to get your name right. Eileen, I think it is. She said listening. Fabian said eye contact. And so did Hannelore. Yes, listening is the most important rule of effective communication. Because if you look as if you are listening to somebody, it makes people feel seen. It makes people feel heard. It makes people feel like they can communicate to you. So listening gives you all the power in a communication. So what I would suggest you do is, when you come onto a call, ask questions. when you come onto a call, you know, or when you see somebody, when you're online, when you're on a phone call, always start with good, what I call open-ended questions. So open-ended questions are questions which allow people to really expand. Like, how are you feeling today? Tell me how your day has gone today. What has been the most exciting thing that's happened to you today? All of those are open-ended questions. They give people an opportunity to communicate, you know, openly, as opposed to people who say, what's your name? Anna. How old are you? 55. Where do you come from? South Africa. Those are what I call closed-end questions. They are just one-word answer questions. If you can get in a good open-ended question at the beginning of a communication, it gives you all the power in that communication. Why? Because what it gives you a sense of who that person is, how they communicate, what kind of mood they're in, what their communication style is. It gives you a real sense of the individual. And of course, the more you know the person you're talking to, the more you are able to pitch your conversation accordingly. So you can use words that they use. You can amp yourself up if they're very animated people, or calm yourself down if they're very low-key people. Or if they're in a bad mood, you can work out how to manage that. So asking questions is really, really important. And then listening to what people have to say is really important. There are 3 traps we can fall into when we're listening. So I'm going to talk about those 3 traps. There's a guy called Michael Bangay-Stainer, who's a top Canadian coach, who talks about these 3 traps you can fall into. The first one is what he calls the go, 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 go intervention. That is when somebody's talking and you're not actually listening to what they have to say. You are waiting for them to pause so you can say something, so you can get in something, so that you can interrupt them, so that you can then hear the sound of your own voice. That's not listening. That's listening to when you can talk. So be very, very careful of the go, go, go intervention. The other one is what I call initiate defense shields. So when somebody says something that makes you feel a bit uncomfortable, you immediately get very defensive and you immediately start talking to them in quite a sort of blocky, defensive way. That again is not good listening. That is you being caught up in your own thoughts, you feeling defensive, you feeling insecure. That isn't you relaxing and listening to what people have to say. So just be very careful that you don't get defensive. The last one is what Michael Bangay-Stainer, and somebody's asking for the name. So I'm just going to type up his name. He runs something called the Box of Crayons. And I'm just going to type this up in the notes, Bangay-Stainer. And he's definitely worth following on LinkedIn, and just looking at the Box of Crayons. You can sign up to his newsletters and stuff. He's a very impressive guy, and he's very good on the kind of business world and how we can all manage from a coach-like place. Anyway, so I said traps you can fall into when you're listening. Go, go, go intervention. Initiate defense fields, initiate defense shields. And then the last one is what he calls the I don't know if you ever do that, but you know, when you're busy and somebody's talking at you and you're actually trying to do something else, you're multitasking, you just go, so you just try and keep them, you know, try and make them think that you're listening when you're actually not listening at all. You're multitasking, you're doing something else at the same time. That isn't listening either. And that's a very easy trap to fall into, particularly online, where you are busy doing 3 other things while you're meant to be on a Zoom call. So try and avoid that, because if you want to have good quality communication on Zoom or on any virtual platform, you need to be really engaged. You need to be really listening. It's also really important that you check in with the other person, the other people that you're talking to. So when you walk in, as I say, with those questions, make sure that every question you ask comes from a really authentic place. So you're going, how are you? And how's it going? And know something about the people that you are talking to. Are they living alone? Are they working from home? Are they working too hard? Are they struggling to get outside? Whatever it is, try and find that information out, because all of that helps inform you, but it also helps the person feel that you care about them. Another important thing when you are on Zoom is to use the power of the pause. Because one of the things that happens in any communication is that if we are trying to say something that is big or important, or we're presenting to lots of people, we tend to speed up because we're a little bit nervous. We don't want to take up too much time. And so we get faster and faster and faster. It's really important that we keep slowing ourselves down. So use the power of the pause. So every now and again, when you are trying to say something, it's okay to pause before you go on to your next point. Because first of all, it gives people a chance to absorb what you're saying. Secondly, it gives you a chance to just kind of take a breath and relax. And thirdly, it actually makes you come across as very wise. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but people who pause, if you ask somebody a question and there's a pause before they answer, you usually think that they're actually having a think, and that whatever they're going to say is going to be quite wise. So that is worth doing as well. Excuse me, I don't know why I'm coughing. I promise you I don't have COVID. I've had both vaccinations, but I'm obviously throwing my voice around or something. The other thing that is really important in communication, and particularly communication online, is to be clear and simple. Because quite a lot of communication gets lost virtually, doesn't it? We all know that. It's never quite the same as us all sitting in the room together. If we were all together, I could be getting to know you. I could be getting you to ask more questions. We could just be, having better banter, etc. So things get lost virtually. So you want to keep things as clear and simple as possible. The person who was most effective at clarity and simplicity was actually Steve Jobs. So whenever Steve Jobs did a presentation, I don't know, so when he produced his latest iPhone, does anybody know what he had on the screen behind him while he was talking about his latest iPhone? Does anybody know what he had on his presentation? I'm going to tell you. He just had images. He just had images, usually of the iPhone sort of slowly turning and sort of, so you got the sense of what it looked like. And then he sometimes had music as well, but he never had any words, or it was very, very rare for him to have any words on the screen. Because Steve Jobs is all about clarity and simplicity. There's a reason why when you get an iPhone, you don't really get instructions with it, do you? So once you understand Apple technology, you get iPhone or AirPods or a MacBook or whatever it is, you can instinctively work out how they work. Because while the instrument itself is very complex, to the end user, they make it as simple as possible. He's very good at joining the dots. It's all about clarity and simplicity. And that's what you need to be aiming for, particularly when you're communicating online. Clarity and simplicity is really important. Don't fall into the trap of death by PowerPoint, where you are presenting, but you have on the screen, endless sheets with lots and lots of words. That's never going to endear you to anybody. So I always think that if you're doing a presentation, it's got to be like packing for a holiday. When you pack for a holiday, you put everything you want to go. Oh God, to go on holiday. Wouldn't that be lovely? I can't wait to go on holiday when this COVID thing's over. You take all your clothes and all the clothes you might want to take, you dump them on your bed. And then what you meant to do, though I'm not very good at it, you meant to halve it. And then you meant to halve it again. So you get down to the kind of essentials, the capsule wardrobe or whatever you want to call it, the stuff you really need to take. That's what you want to do when you're presenting online. You want to be keeping things to the headlines, to the key points, because otherwise points will just get lost. So clarity and simplicity is important. Just one more point on the sort of key essential things if you want to be a good communicator is avoid what I would call the me trap. Be careful that you don't spend too much time talking about yourself, how you're doing, how things are going for you, the impact something's having on you, why you need something done, all about you. You want to be throwing the conversation open as much as you can, because if it's all about you, first of all, people get bored. Secondly, you're giving your power away because you're giving all your stuff away to everybody all the time. You want to be focused on everybody out there rather than on yourself. So particularly now, when you're working from home, there's quite a lot of isolation. It's very easy to get caught in the me trap. So try and avoid just doing that. So those are my key points on what makes a good communicator. Does anybody want to ask a question? Does anybody put any questions in the Q&A? No. So does anybody want to ask any questions in the chat before I leap into how to persuade a conversation? Has anybody got anything that they want to challenge me on, question me on? Or are we all on track? Great. I am going to talk a little bit now about how to persuade a conversation. So no matter what you have to say, it gets received well. Because, you know, sometimes we have to have slightly awkward conversations. We have to tell somebody that actually things aren't going, they aren't performing the way they should be performing, or you are really getting fed up with the way they're operating, or, you know, just something that is a little bit tricky in terms of a communication. So how can we get a communication that is going to land better than it would if you just railed in and said, blah, I don't like this, or I'm unhappy with this, or this is really, you know, making me upset. Because the problem is that if you go into a conversation like that and you just go blah, people will initiate defense shields. People will get cross, they'll get angry, they'll get defensive, whatever it is. So you want to be avoiding that. So how do we make those conversations better? We do what I call persuade a conversation. So it's all about getting people on your side. Now there's a great book. This is by a guy called Robert. I just got to get the name right. It's Cialdini. Robert, I call it Cialdini, but it's not Cialdini, is it? It's Cialdini. Robert Cialdini wrote a book called Presuede. I'm just going to write the book down as well. And this is a book that is well worth reading because he's done a whole lot of research on how to have difficult conversations. And he also uses it in the context of how you can sell more effectively. What is the best way to sell effectively? And he talks about persuasion. So persuasion is all about getting people on your side before you hit them with a difficult message. So how do you get people on your side? It's doing more of what I've been talking about. So when you start a conversation, first of all, you need to check in with somebody. Check in how they're doing, check in what kind of mood they're in, check in that they are open to listening to you. And then you probably want to say something positive to them. You want to say something about how you value them, what it is that you value about them. Because if you do that, people will be more relaxed. They'll be less likely to initiate defense shields. They'll be less likely to get angry with you. They'll be less likely to take whatever you have to say badly. So it's really important that you persuade the conversations. But if you're going to persuade a conversation, you have to do it authentically. So you have to do it in a way where you actually are genuine about what you want to say. So when you check in, you genuinely check in, you're genuinely interested in how they are, you genuinely care about what they have to say. And then when you thank them for something or tell them what you value about them, you've got to really mean it. Because if you don't, then you won't get people on your side. Because if it lands badly and they just think, oh, this person's just buttering me up, just making me feel better so that they can hit me with a difficult theory, that's not going to work, is it? So pre-persuade people before you have a difficult conversation with them. So that's persuading when you've got a difficult message. What about if you need to say no to somebody? You need to say no because actually, whatever it is that they've asked you to do, it's going to be difficult for you to do. So there are a couple of ways you can do this. I say, instead of saying no to somebody, you have to manage people's expectations. So if somebody comes onto a Zoom call and says, Anna, I need you to do this and I need you to do it by, in the next half an hour. If it's somebody very senior, a lot of us go, yes, of course, I'll do it immediately. And then you'll get off the call and think, actually, I'm not quite sure what they asked me that I needed to do. I'm not quite sure what they needed me to do. And secondly, but I've got a couple of other senior people ask me to do something and I've got absolutely no time. How am I going to do all of these things? And it's in situations like that that we get panicky, that we get overwhelmed, that we hate our jobs, nothing goes well. So the first thing is when somebody hits you with a tricky request, or just hits you with a request, frankly, the first thing you have to do is pause. So don't immediately say yes. Just pause. And then instead of saying yes, ask a question. So somebody says, Anna, I need you to do this, this, and this, and I need you to do it now. You pause and say, can I just double check exactly what it is you want me to do? Or am I hearing that you want me to do this? Because that just makes sure that you are absolutely clear on what they want you to do. And then once you've got clarity on that, there is probably something about managing their expectations. So they say, oh, I need you in the next half an hour. You can say, well, actually, this is what I'm working on at the moment. Is this more important? If so, can we push back the deadline on that? Or if you need me to do, these are what I'm doing. These are my priorities at the moment. Where do you want me to put it in my priority list? Because sometimes when people ask us for something, we take full responsibility for whatever it is, and we take full responsibility for prioritizing it. And actually, sometimes it's much better to have a dialogue, because they'll go, oh, well, if you're working on that, then I don't want you to work on this. Or, oh, well, if you're working on that, then I'm going to have to go and speak to so-and-so to find out whether I can have you for this half an hour to do this. So what's happening there is you're not having to say no. You are just making sure that it really needs to be done, and that it's going to be done in a way that isn't going to kill you. And it's going to be done in a way that actually we're getting the priorities right. So just always, when you get asked to do something, pause, ask a question, and then get help with prioritizing if you need to. And the other thing is always ask for more time than you need. I've got a client who's a management consultant, and he is very good. Somebody will say, we need you to do this project and we need it now. And he'll always say, well, actually, I need a bit more time than that. This is how much time I need. He's very good at making sure that he's given the latitude to get something done. And he always pauses, always asks questions, and he just comes across, people really rate him, because if I look at his 360-degree feedback, etc., because they think that he's very wise. And yes, I'm sure he is very wise, but I don't think he's necessarily any wiser than anybody else in his team. But he's just mastered that art of looking as if he's thinking, pausing, making sure he's getting the priorities right, making sure that he's very clear on what the task is. It's really important that you do that. Avoiding conflict. Conflict online can be pretty messy, can't it? Because you can come off a call or a virtual conversation where things have got a little bit sort of messy and you come off feeling quite upset, or you feel that, you know, nothing was resolved or whatever. I think there's just a couple of things on that. Again, I just make sure that if a couple of things, if a situation is escalating, end the call. If the situation is not escalating but getting tetchy, start throwing in questions as opposed to giving strong opinions. And then thirdly, and most importantly, is know what kind of person you are dealing with. Because there's been a lot of work done on conflict, and there are now two kinds of people, or there are two sort of spectrums that is often used in terms of conflict management. There are conflict seekers and there are conflict avoiders. So conflict seekers are people who have quite a punchy communication style. They like to communicate in a very punchy way. They quite like conflict because they like to resolve issues quickly and effectively through a sort of, you know, conflicty type of way. You know, you have a bit of a bun fight, you have a bit of an argument on Zoom or whatever, and then you're over it. And then they're conflict seekers, people who really don't like conflict, really don't like when things get punchy or aggressive. And really don't like getting involved in sort of, you know, sort of difficult conversations and sort of, you know, shouting matches on Zoom or whatever. You know, that's really not their style. And those people, often what happens is that they can be either passive aggressive, so they can get quite snarky, sarcastic and a bit snarky, or they don't say anything and it all builds up and then they just explode one day because it's all been building up and they haven't been able to say things. It's very important that you know who you are, whether you're a conflict seeker or a conflict avoider. And if you can ascertain who it is you're talking to, as to whether they are conflict seekers or conflict avoiders, that is really helpful as well, because you can then work out the best way to communicate. So if you're talking to somebody who's a conflict seeker, then you know that you can raise your voice. Then you know that you can be sort of quite punchy. And in fact, you almost have to. And also just know that that's who they are. So it's going to land less badly for you. If you're a conflict avoider, so you want to not have those comments, or if you're talking to somebody who's a conflict avoider, you want to tone yourself down. You want to be very careful that you're not punchy. You want to be, if they're getting a bit passive aggressive with you, just know that's because they don't like conflict and that's their way of communicating. So really try and understand who it is you're communicating with, particularly online, whether it's a conflict seeker or a conflict avoider. I hope that makes sense. So that's how to Presuede a conversation and how to say no and sort of manage conflict. Does anybody want to ask a question? I'm going to switch a light on because I'm sitting here in the dark. So I'm just going to lean over and switch a light on. Type up a question if you've got one. And I will just get some lights on. You can get to see my jumper, everybody. Anybody got a question they want to ask? No, we're okay. My final, and we've thanks Zoltan, I'm saying all good. My final point today is, and then I'd love to have a dialogue with you, or we can play around with something else, is how to turn the virtual world into an advantage for you and others. I guess there are a couple of things about the virtual world. They're the obvious points, like, you know, we don't have to leave our home and we can still connect with people. And there are some advantages to that. I know we all get a bit bored being at home all the time, but actually not having, you know, for my job, I'm based outside London, but I work in London. So when I'm in the normal world, or the world before COVID, I spent my whole day, every day, going around to people's offices. And I was on the tube and, just moving around all the time. And now I get to talk to some of my clients on the phone while we're going for a walk. I get to see, talk to people all over the world. You know, there are lots of advantages to operating from your bedroom, and also I'm not creating any kind of damage to the environment by being at home. But there are many more advantages to that. In the virtual world, you can be much braver. You can reach out to people that you wouldn't necessarily, you know, pick the phone up to or knock on their door. So you can link up with them on LinkedIn. You can follow them on Instagram. You can join a networking panel where they might be. You can connect with people that you wouldn't necessarily be able to connect with face to face. And it's amazing. You can email somebody. It's amazing how many people, particularly during COVID, actually, were happy to be reached out to. So I challenge you all to be really brave in the virtual world. Reach out to people, follow them on LinkedIn, follow them on Instagram, send them messages, you know, connect, because you can do that virtually. And people, that's now acceptable. It's now, or it's much more acceptable than it was. And don't just link with them on LinkedIn, send them a message. Don't just follow them on Instagram, DM them. Don't just look at their website and think, oh gosh, send them a message. Connect with people, because you can. So be brave, network, reach out, and keep going, because you know what it's like. You know, the networks just expand, don't they? You link with somebody, and then you can link with somebody else, and then you can link with somebody else. And, you know, all of that, having a good, strong network is really great. But if you want a strong network, it's not just about linking with them on LinkedIn. It's actually creating a dialogue with people. Explore the different ways of communicating virtually. So I've spoken about that, haven't I? It doesn't have to always be on Zoom. You can do lots of different things. You can go for a walk and talk to people on the phone. You can have webinars like this where it's just one person talking to all of you, or everybody can have their cameras switched on. You can create chats where people go into breakout rooms. There's so many different ways and tools in the virtual world that are worth exploring, and actually, you know, can deepen your experience of any kind of communication. So keep exploring those, because there's new stuff happening all the time, and it's worth, I mean, I have a lot of fun because I do webinars for all sorts of different corporates and on various platforms like this, and I get given different webinar, you know, features all the time, and I get given different virtual platforms, and it's really fun because, you know, you can do different things with them. So it's really great. So just explore all the options that are out there. I challenge you all to set up something, create something virtually, whatever it is. So be the difference you want to see. So if there's something that you are passionate about, you really believe in, create a network around that. Create a tribe around that. Create a networking event. Get a speaker to come and talk about something. You know, there are lots of great speakers out there now. And I mean, I know for me, you know, that's the one wonderful thing about COVID. So I've spoken to a group of attorneys in LA. You know, I've spoken to people in Europe. I speak to people in Africa. I mean, I've spoken to people all over the world. And then I've run webinars for corporates where people from literally sort of 17 different countries have been on the call. So this is a wonderful opportunity to do that kind of stuff. So I would really look at creating something. Do it. I challenge you all. Having said all of that, there's a reason why this was called digital detox, wasn't it? We can be zoomed out, can't we? We can spend too much time on screens. So there are a couple of key things. There are a couple of things that I have put into place, because if I could easily have gone into the trap where I just did Zoom call after Zoom call after Zoom call. So if I had all my clients on Zoom with no sort of pause in between them, first of all, you know, I would be even blinder than I am now. Secondly, I just would be exhausting because, you know, when you are communicating virtually, you do have to work that much harder, don't you? So be really strict with yourselves. Not everything has to be a Zoom call. You do not have to attend every single meeting necessarily. So always double check that you really need it at that meeting. And then create different things like I do. As I say, I've got clients I walk and talk with. I've got clients where I have to make notes, but I'm on my AirPods and I'm talking. I've got clients where I only talk to them for 20 minutes on Zoom. And then an alarm goes off and then that's it. That's their slot for the week. And then I talk to them next week, because most of my clients I talk to once a month, but then I do have some where I talk to for 20 minutes a week or whatever. To shake it up as much as you can. It's really important that you do that, because otherwise you will be strapped to your machine all the time. The other thing is, do make sure that in between each Zoom, you try and give yourself at least 5 minutes. So if you do happen to have, a few Zooms back to back, get up from your desk, do a few jumping jacks, have a stretch, do some breathing. I do what's called the 3-4-5 method of breathing, which is really important if you want to make sure that there isn't too much of the stress hormone, cortisol, flooding your brain. And it just makes sure that your system stays stays functioning well. You're not just sitting in fight and flight response and feeling really stressed. If you do some breathing, it allows you what's called your parasympathetic nervous system to kick in, and then you can just be a little bit more relaxed. So the 3-4-5 method of breathing is you breathe in for 3, hold for 4, and breathe out for 5. And I do it 3 times between each Zoom. And then I might do some jumping jacks or, run up and down on the spot or whatever it is. I make sure I move, I change the energy. But the 3-4-5 method of breathing is the most important. Breathe in for 3, hold for 4, and breathe out for 5. The other thing that is really important when it comes to technology and the virtual world is make sure that you stick to a good routine. Because one of the research is showing that actually most of us on average are working at least 40 minutes longer a day whilst working from home. In the way that the kind of working day has kind of leached and sort of leaked into our whole day. What you really want to do is try and create a good routine. So I get up in the morning and I have a nice strong coffee, because I love my coffee, and I try and drink my 2 coffees before sort of 11 o'clock in the morning. Have a nice strong coffee. I then do a quick workout. I have a cold shower, because cold showers just gives you a zing. And then I come to my machine. I then spend time in my machine, but I make sure with regular breaks, and I try and have at least 1 or 2 sessions, which are walking and talking. I then make sure that I have a break at lunchtime. Even if sometimes it's only 20 minutes, I have a break. And then at the end of the day, I have an end to my day. So I end my day and then I close my computer. Obviously, I still have my phone, but it's absolute rule that my phone, I do not look at my phone for at least an hour before going to sleep. Because that blue light that comes from all our machines, from our computers, from our phones, that blue light is really mucking up our circadian rhythms. And our circadian rhythms is what allows us to sleep well. And sleep is really important if you're going to stay alert, if you're going to stay calm, if you're going to process all the information for the day. So make sure that you don't have that blue light on in your room. Just another thing that I do when I go to sleep, which is really important and really makes a huge difference to the way I sleep, is when I go to sleep, I think about all the things that I have achieved. I think about all the good moments in the day, like that first sip of coffee in the morning, or that zing that I got from my shower, or the fact that one of my clients had a great breakthrough, or did something fantastic that was worth celebrating. I go to sleep thinking about those things. I don't go to sleep thinking about all the things I haven't done, all the things I still have to do, the big webinar that I've got to run for some bank, with 200 people on the call. I don't think about those things, because if I think about those things, that is what I will wake up thinking about. So I'll wake up feeling a bit nervous, a bit stressed, a bit overwhelmed. What if I think about the good stuff? There's a much better chance of me waking up the next morning and thinking, yes, this is good. I can do another Zoom call. I can cope with another virtual session, because I'm feeling that much better. So routine, taking regular breaks, breathing, and then noticing the good stuff. And then just forget going anywhere near a blue light just before you go to sleep, because that is rule number 1, do not do. The last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to stop talking to you because you must be absolutely exhausted listening to me rabbiting on. Don't be too reactive when it comes to the virtual world. Because one of the traps we can fall into is that we just react to everything that comes into our inbox. So everything that comes to our inbox, we react to. You need to carve out time in your everyday to not be doing reactive stuff. So carve out time to do your project work, or what I call your great work, the work that's going to get you promoted, that's going to get you recognized, the work that you really love. Don't let that work get hijacked by endless emails coming into your box or being dragged into another Zoom meeting. Make sure that you are very clear about when you're not going to be doing that stuff. So try and have some moments in your day when you are being what I call proactive rather than reactive to everything that's coming at you from these machines that can so easily rule our lives. I think that's all I've got to say to you. I've gone blah. I've given you a lot because I haven't had your lovely faces to talk to. I've had to just go blah. Does anybody want to ask me a question or challenge me? Is there a way we can measure effective communication on Zoom? Zoltan, that is just a brilliant question. Is there a way we can measure effective communication on Zoom? I would say that what you need to do is you need to create strong, what I call feedback loops. So you need to find out from other people if you are coming across well on Zoom, and if there's anything that you should be doing more of or less of. So check it out with your manager or with people that you are communicating with, or whatever it is. Try and get some feedback. That is the best way to measure effective communication. But just know that some people will like your communication style and other people won't like it as well. So don't take everything that's said to you literally, but just try and get tips on how you might be able to want to do it better. I hope that helps, Zoltan. And then Ben, hello Ben, do I have any slides? Do you know I don't have any slides? No. But if you follow me on Instagram or something, or LinkedIn, you will find, and on LinkedIn is Anna Percy-Davis, and my Instagram, all of these things come up all the time. I love that. Do I meditate? I absolutely do. And I do, yes. So after my workout, when I finish my workout, I will meditate but literally for 3 minutes. But I definitely meditate, and meditate I couldn't recommend highly enough to anybody and everybody. And if you don't do meditate, just try doing some yoga, or even if you're just doing, the 3-4-5 method of breathing, and really concentrating on the breathing and counting the breaths, and try and do that 3 times a day, you will be moving towards meditation. So yes, Fabian, I do. And I hope you do too. Anything else you want to ask me or challenge me? You've been lovely. I just know you have, but I just sorry that I can't talk to you more. Fabian has said thank you. So pleasure, Fabian. I think you can all go off and put your feet up. It's Monday after all. Monday evening for most of us. So the Mexicans is still middle of the day, I think. But please keep in touch. And yeah, I hope I get to work with you or do something with you someday soon. But it's been a real pleasure communicating with you. And please do, as I say, please do send me more questions if you want to, or just message me or whatever. Thank you, Irina. I hope everybody else is seeing these chats. And I think you can all drop off now if you want to, and go and have your supper or whatever it is. And I'm going to leave you all in peace, I think.